Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Intopia's Ask Me Anything GAD edition webinar. The webinar will start in a minute. We'll just give a minute for anybody else to join, and feel free to pop in the chat where you're tuning in from today. All right. Well, let's get cracking. Good on you for taking the time to invest in your knowledge about accessibility and inclusion. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands of which we gather today. I'm on Turrbal land in Meanjin, Brisbane. Pay my respect to elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today. I'm Naomi Sains, the marketing manager at Intopia. I'll be your guide, I'll be your host today. I'd like to introduce you to our presenters. We have Neil Jarvis, Senior Digital Accessibility Consultant, Tess Hutley, Digital Accessibility Consultant, and Adam Chifchiolu, Director of Accessible Technologies. We have captioning being provided by AI Media, and a recording of the webinar will be published on our YouTube channel shortly after. This is our Global Accessibility Awareness Day edition of Ask Me Anything webinar that we regularly do. We've made it GAD Week at Intopia. There's lots of exciting resources and announcements coming out this week, so keep an eye on our socials for that. But today it's your chance to ask any question that you have of our wonderful experts here today. They all have firsthand experience of living with disability, incredibly experienced people, and we love them on our team. To kick us off, Neil, Tess, Adam, can you share a little bit of a summary of who you are, how you got into accessibility, and maybe what life experiences that you can talk to today? Adam, you're first in my little Brady bunch, so do you want to kick us off?
Oh yeah, but you said short, right? So I could go on all day. You're gonna have to wrap me up. All right, so I'm Adam. I'm one of the co-founders here at Intopia. Got into accessibility by chance, even though anyone who's kind of seen me wheeling around knows I'm in a wheelchair. I started my career at a small boutique marketing agency as general IT support. Was doing anything from website development to phone calls and event organization and that sort of stuff. Started in back end development, moved to front end, took a contract at one of the big banks, and kind of fell into accessibility. Does that give you what you need, Naomi?
That's really brilliant. That is very efficient. So well done on that. And what about now at Intopia? What's it looking like for you?
Well, now at Intopia, I'm wearer of many hats, as a few of us are in the team. What do? I do anything from training and facilitation to QA, to consulting, to anything else that needs doing, really. As one of the directors and co-founders, we kind of jump in wherever we're needed.
Amazing. I love it. We love having you on the team. And Adam, of course, being one of our directors, very important for Intopia as a whole. Tess, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello. I got into accessibility by accident as well. I actually joined Intopia nearly 3 years ago, and afterwards I ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD, and so realizing that all of this applied a lot more to me than I previously understood. So it's been a bit of a backwards journey for me, but I work mainly in Intopia's inclusive learning space. So working on e-learning and training courses and all manner of other content as well. I do PDF remediation and other content stuff. And yeah, I think that covers it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Perfect. And Neil, hello.
Hello.
You've got this beautiful like Northern Lights video background going on that's got some trees, it's got some like, yeah, is that because Melbourne and some of our southern friends have been able to see some lights over the weekend?
No, I wish I could say it was that, but it really isn't.
Would you
It
like
just
to kick us
happens to
off?
be there. Yes. What was the question? Sorry, I apologize for
Oh,
being late.
Tell us all about you, Neil, how you got into accessibility, what you're passionate about, what experiences you can reflect on today. Just a brief summary would be fantastic just to set the
Sure.
scene.
So I'm Neil. Lovely to be here. I am one of the senior consultants at Intopia. I am the strategy lead for in the organization, which means our team focuses on the work that organizations can do to embed accessibility into their ways of working and deliver best practice when it comes to accessibility. I'm somebody who completely benefits from accessibility. I'm totally blind. I have been all my life. I have a long memory of a time before the internet and before online content was available. And every day I wake up and think just how marvelous the internet is, even when it's not. So yeah, I'm very much a person who loves the ability to access information as a result of the internet that I simply could not do when I was a child and in my first sort of decade of being supposedly an adult.
Amazing. Thanks, Neil. We're going to start without Ask Me Anything. So in the Q&A feature at the bottom, you can put any question you like. Nothing is too silly or complicated. Hit us with your questions. It's a safe space. This is your opportunity to ask and get really fantastic answers from these amazing, passionate experts. To kick us off, what's one common misconception about your disability that you'd like to address?
Which one of us goes first?
You can choose whichever you like.
All right, I might kick it off then, given I've already unmuted. So I don't know if it's a common misconception about my disability. For context, my disability is cerebral palsy. It means in my context that I can't walk unassisted, so I either use the wheelchair or some sticks to get around. One of the things that I've noticed, particularly in Melbourne and particularly around train stations, is when I'm heading in with the wheelchair, someone will inevitably at least once, maybe twice a week, come up behind me and just randomly start pushing because they think I need help. I'll be honest, sometimes that's cool, depending on how the weather is outside. But most of the time, I'd rather they asked before they just started pushing me because, may not be going in the direction that they think I'm going in.
So it sounds like it's the assuming.
That's it. I mean, ask, don't assume.
I'm still waiting for you to 3D print some spikes for your wheelchair handles, Adam.
Actually, you know what? Great idea. We should actually do that. No.
You could start a business on the side.
We could.
I guess I'll go since I'm talking. I think for ADHD, a lot of the misconception is around what it actually is and who has it. I've noticed that a lot of people I know who've been diagnosed feel a lot of shame because they feel like they don't look or act the way that people expect people with ADHD to act, and they feel almost as though they're imposters. Imposter syndrome seems to be rife in the community. After I got diagnosed, my mom got diagnosed shortly thereafter, and she has really struggled with people in her life saying, how have you, could you possibly have this? You've done so well. You've had a family, you've had a career, you've done all these things. And it's not to say that she couldn't do it. It's more to say that it was incredibly, incredibly difficult. But so that feeling of not feeling almost disabled enough or neurodiverse enough seems to be a real common thread with people with ADHD that I know personally, and myself as well.
I think the assume don't ask is very common to a lot of disabilities, and a lot of people with disabilities experience that kind of imposition of somebody else's will on us. I think for me, one of the big ones is that people assume that I must in some way be really sad about my disability. They assume that probably I would prefer not to be blind, and wouldn't it be great if this magical bionic technology came around that, quote, cured, unquote, me. Nothing could be further from the truth in my case, and in the case of many people I know. I'm not minimizing the impact of blindness and the loss of sight that people do go through, especially later in life. But the idea that we're all the same and we're all just begging to be cured is one thing that really gets my goat. So yeah, that's probably the one I would go with.
Yeah. Wow. All really powerful responses to that. Definitely that, yeah, that ask, don't assume. I like that. I like that one a lot. We have a question here for Akiko, which is a question about voluntary or apprenticeships around accessibility auditing and testing. Are there any volunteering or apprenticeship opportunities around the world where an emerging ALI specialist can join? I love that. Love your passion in there, Akiko. Hopefully our experts can point you in the right direction.
Sounds like a good one Adam might know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, are there opportunities out there? Absolutely. I mean, I think if I'm reading the additional context to that question, there's a bit more that says, I assume I need to familiarize myself more with WCAG testing, wondering how and where I can practice this. So I'm not sure if we're looking at, I guess, the apprenticeship, internship style sort of working, then I'd say that would form part of that experience. And I know, I know in our case that we have worked with people in that situation before, where they've come in and effectively they're working with us to improve their skills and kind of upskill and train. So so to yes, from that perspective, I guess. In terms of how you can kind of upskill with WCAG, there are resources out there that will help you do that. I probably should plug the Intopia Learn platform, but I'm not going to do much more than that. In that context, we do have some great courses out there, but also the other one I can think of off the top of my head is the Section 508 Trusted Tester course, because I think that it's kind of pretty big and pretty detailed, but does a good job of kind of cementing accessibility testing methodologies and that sort of stuff as well. So hopefully that's answered the question. But Neil, Tess, anything either of you want to add to that?
I would just urge Akiko and anybody else who's interested in getting involved in accessibility to look at the myriad of online groups that are around, support groups that are around, where people share their their knowledge and their skills and ask questions just like you're doing here. And there's a ton of them on Facebook and Slack and even through email groups and that sort of thing. And a lot of people learn in those forums, certainly the basics. And then, as Adam says, there are plenty of online and other resources which you can then go to and upskill yourself. So immerse yourself in some of those groups. You'll find some of them are just what you're looking for, some of them are not. So you've got to experiment a little bit, but do that, and I think you'll be well rewarded.
Amazing. I'll also just add in general, offering your skills to organizations on a volunteer basis. There are so many amazing not-for-profits and community groups and so on, and that could also be a way to test out your skills as well, whilst also having an impact. Awesome. We have another question here from Jerry. In your experience, what are some of the most impactful blockers to workplace digital accessibility? Oh, a juicy one. I have a feeling this is going to be a good one. All right, who's going to kick us off? Everyone's smiling here. Who wants to jump in first?
I've got a super broad one that I want to start with because I know Adam and Neil are going to have some really, really juicy stuff. But for me, it's literally just the existence of disability as needing to be done in inclusion, because the amount of like diversity and inclusion plans I see that are to do with, you know, gender inclusivity and like racial inclusivity and religious inclusivity and all these different groups, which are absolutely incredibly important, but do not include and people with disability in their DEI plans or in their workplace. You know, are there any accommodations for that? Are there even routes for people to ask for that? So it's literally acknowledging the existence of people with disability as needing to be like part of your DEI plan. It seems to me to be a really enormous blocker that happens a surprising amount. Anyway.
I couldn't agree more, Tess. I think that's one of the big blockers, because it's almost like we haven't yet been allowed to join the party. And I certainly, in the course of my work and in the course of all the work I've done over the years before even coming to Intopia, I've certainly found that to be a big issue. Or there's a lot of work on diversity, but somehow disability isn't included in diversity. So I think you're spot on to pick that out. And I think in addition to that, and look, there are hundreds of things you could point to say that if this was done better, life would be a lot easier. I would go general again and just say, when it comes to creating accessibility barriers, that happens when people don't factor in accessibility. So that's speaking right back to Tess's point there. If people aren't thinking about accessibility for people with disability or other issues, then they're not going to create accessible products, and they'll end up being very late to the party when it comes to thinking about inclusion for and accessibility. So what happens then is it becomes too hard or too expensive, and at that point it's, well, we can't do it this time, but we'll do it next time we launch a new product or procure a new piece of equipment. Only thing is that person's then moved on when next time comes around and you're back at where you started. So I would say to avoid that block, start thinking about accessibility at the beginning of any development or procurement process.
You said the magic word there, I think, Neil. You said procurement, and I think this is one of the things, because a lot of organizations, when they think about accessibility, they prioritize the, let's call it the public facing things, so the external to the organization things that they build or that they sell, and tend to forget about the internal side of things, like, you know, the HR system or the meeting rooms or any of that sort of stuff that really does have a day-to-day impact on employees with disabilities within an organization. And I think for me, it kind of starts with the procurement side of things and the procurement conversation, because if you can get accessibility requirements in as part of procurement, which, Neil, you know all too well, given the work you guys have recently done around procurement. That's kind of where I think it all starts in terms of removing those barriers.
Yes, I think for me, there's a good indicator. If you're not considering accessibility and inclusion for your own staff, you're not really likely to do it for your customers.
Mic drop moment.
Yep.
Can't. My mic's on the edge of on the end of my headset. So.
So I'm hearing as the blockers, not including your employees as well, not including people with disabilities in DI, and not thinking about accessibility at the beginning as the main blockers.
Yep, I think that's a pretty good summary.
Pretty good list. Okay, we have another question here from Kim. Imagine you're in a higher education institution with a new learning management system. What's a good approach to understanding the accessibility of LTIs? Where would we start, and what are some common problems we might find?
Me.
Tess,
Oh man.
Tess, that one's yours.
So I run the LMS that we do our e-learning product on, Kim. So this is a very exciting question for me. And boy, do I have thoughts about LMSs. They are famously inaccessible. Pretty much everyone on the market is awful. So what you will expect to find is a host of issues. A lot of the time it is in the fundamental way that the platform works with assistive technology. A lot of them are incredibly inaccessible to screen readers. They're marked up really terribly. So a lot of the things like the buttons, or in particular the interactive activities, are a real sore point in most LMSs. A lot of them rely on features like drag and drop, which can be incredibly inaccessible to a lot of people. A lot of assistive technology does not work so well with drag and drop. That's just one example, but there is a lot of that going on in the world of LMSs, particularly so many sprung up during the pandemic and people sort of flocked to them, but they just really have a lot of broken features. So if you are looking into what LMS to use, where can we find accessibility? I mean, your bread and butter to start with is obviously looking at things like, do they have a VPAT? Do they have an accessibility page on their website? Do they even consider this as a company? If you Google their name and the word accessibility, there are people out there who are doing pretty comprehensive reviews of LMSs for accessibility. I've seen some awesome blogs out there of people who are systematically taking them down one by one. We at Intopia use Thinkific, which we tested a bunch, and we found that one to be the best experience. Neil actually was one of our guinea pigs, and I remember, Neil, you were like shocked that it actually worked when we tested it out. So that was a very fun day. But seeing someone actually be surprised that an LMS worked with a screen reader was sort of an indicator of how bad these usually are. So yeah, I think that's sort of the way I'd approach it. Adam, you might have thought, O'Neill, on procurement and things like that.
No, I'm not sure there's much more I can add to that. I think you've kind of hit the key points there, Tess.
Yeah, I agree. Only thing I would say is that we know that I think we know where the question's coming from, because we have got experience of talking with people in the higher and further education sector precisely about this subject, and the heartache that it causes to many students with disability, because they cannot do the courses that they want to do, or if they can do them, they run into submission problems and all that sort of thing. We heard a lot about that when we were drawing up our procurement toolkit. So it's something that it's real, it's ever present, and I think Tess's comments are spot on.
I do want to add that I know in higher education, a lot of the time people are locked into systems. They don't get a choice as a learning designer or as a teacher. You are stuck using whatever platform you've been given. So if that is the case, one thing that you can do, I mean, first you can gather information about what are the known bugs out there. And, by just doing sort of some quick Googling, you're very likely to find that somebody has written about this. So you can maybe familiarize yourself with those bugs and then set about trying to figure out, well, how can I work around that? I mean, if I can avoid using this particular activity interface, for example, if I know it's broken, or if I know that this is going to be an issue, is there an alternative I can offer students? So say, well, you're not going to be able to do this activity and I can't change that, but at least maybe I can give you a screen recording of someone doing the activity so you can watch it happen. Obviously, we hate to give people different experiences, and that's a sad and awful solution, but that is just a sort of worst case scenario if you are locked into using these sorts of things and you've got no other choice. Yeah,
and then as a medium to long-term solution, if you're someone in the institution that's able to influence future procurement, there's a whole load of questions that you can be asking potential vendors, and you can also ensure that your requirement for accessibility is front and center, which all too often doesn't happen, which is why we end up with inaccessible platforms. So even if you can't solve it today, as Tess says, there is always a plan B. There is always a what can we do in the meantime, which isn't ideal, but you have to be where you are, not where you want to be. And then for medium to long-term thinking, start thinking about what the institution will do when it comes to reviewing or replacing that platform, which it will do.
Yeah, and I think just quickly, the other thing there is that incremental improvement is okay. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be inaccessible today and then completely accessible overnight, right? That's not practical. It's not practical from an LMS perspective. It's not practical in any perspective with accessibility, right? So anything that you can do to make the experience more accessible is a step in the right direction.
Amazing. So I'm hearing, do your research, see if the platform that you're looking at is accessible at all, figure out what the bugs are, find some workarounds if you can, and incremental improvements are okay. Love it. That's amazing. Thank you, Kim, for that question. We've got another one from Jonathan. From your interactions, are there still many organizations that push hard against implementing more accessibility, let alone inclusion and equitable approaches to their products and services?
Great question. Not quite sure how to answer it, because I think from the perspective of Intopia, and in particular the clients that we work with, I think we're seeing the opposite of that. We're actually seeing that our clients are, embracing the work and pushing into the accessibility space, and aiming to actually make things more accessible. So I can't sort of generalize and say everyone's like that, but I think in our experience and the companies and the clients that we're working with, we're seeing that they're actually working on accessibility because they want to be working on accessibility.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think the reason for that is if they're coming to talk to us, they're already thinking about accessibility, or they're beginning to think about accessibility. But it's the numerous organizations and companies that aren't talking to us yet because they haven't yet thought about accessibility. And as a day-to-day user of assistive tech, there isn't a day goes by when I don't run into an obstacle of some sort caused by inaccessible software or inaccessible platforms. And that even happens in government organizations, for example, where it should be better. And, I've had many ongoing discussions, very, very friendly ones, because I'm that sort of guy, with particularly government departments that should be doing better but aren't living up to their own requirements. And when you dig a bit deeper, you find out that they didn't even know they had requirements. So I think those pushbacks are there. And when you try and find out why that is, you're frequently told it's because of the cost, whatever that usually means. It's because we're too busy dealing with something else. So we're always told that accessibility has to wait until security and privacy is sorted out. And we well know that security and privacy and accessibility, we see them as part of a matrix. And to get all of them right, you need to work on all of them. And it shouldn't be an either or, it should be an and. So frequently we're just told it's not, as users, we're often told it's we'll get to it, but they never do. Or they go down the road of something like using inappropriate technology that they've been told worked quite well. And I'm thinking in particular of overlays and things like that.
Yeah, well, AI is going to solve the world's problems, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've cheekily looked at one of the questions in the Q&A just then.
I was just going to say, I'm like, that goes really well with our next question, which is, some people are saying that AI will solve everything. Thoughts?
Yes, it will, absolutely.
The end.
This is very timely because Neil shared some great ideas with Russ, one of our head trainers, late last year on a special webinar we did just on AI. So we'll do some answering now, but we've got a whole webinar back up as well if this is the topic for you. Neil, would you like to kick us off?
I mean, I would say that it's never as simple as it will solve everything or it's going to be the end of the world, is it? It's always somewhere in between. And I can give you numerous examples where artificial intelligence has quite literally changed my life in terms of giving me access to information about photographs, about pictures, about images, things that I can't get access to normally. Pictures that I've had in my collection for decades all of a sudden have become alive to me thanks to the use of AI. However, there is the other side, which is how trustworthy and reliable is AI. You have to be careful that you're not being given false information. You're not seeing the hallucinations that AI, particularly large language models systems, are particularly known for. And in that webinar that you mentioned, Naomi, we talked a little bit about that. So it is a mixed bag. It has definitely made a huge difference for me. But I'm not anyone who I'm never going to say to you it's going to solve all problems, because it won't, and it can't, and it shouldn't be expected to. It's an unrealistic expectation of the tool that it will solve all problems. But if you use it judiciously, like you would use any half decent tool, you'll get some good use out of it.
Yeah, I was joking when I said it would solve all
I
problems
know you were.
as my first answer. I think just one thing to add and back up. So in a previous life before I was an accessibility person, I was a HTML developer, and before that I was a backend developer using PHP and MySQL. Don't do much of that these days, but had to do something the other day to quickly patch something on a website that was a few years old. I've forgotten all that code, right? So I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? Let's log into ChatGPT and see if that can help. Now, it did, right? Eventually it solved the problem, but that was after 3.5, 4 hours of asking the same question 15 different ways to get an answer that it actually allowed me to pick up some code and actually use it, because everything that I tried to put in, it gave me code for that didn't work. So, there's going to be some things that the AI can solve for you, I think, relatively easily. But as you were saying, Neil, there's going to be some things that it's not going to be able to solve.
Yeah.
I do think also there's an attitude that we need to be aware of and cautious of that comes with AI. And it's sort of the same thing that comes with those overlay, which is what we see with a lot of clients, where accessibility gets deprioritized and it always gets pushed to the back of the queue, and it always gets the least amount of time and the least amount of funding. And a lot of people who have that mindset see things like overlays or things like AI and think, oh, good, here's a quick fix. Finally, I can tick the box on accessibility without actually having to prioritize it, without actually having to put in time or resources, because this has solved it. And I think we're probably going to have a really painful few years where we see the results of that.
Yes.
And so that's a human choice that's going to make. I mean, we can use AI for good or for evil, but it's going to depend on how we prioritize accessibility, as with everything, I think.
Giving the example of the access to images and pictures that I mentioned before that AI has provided in the literally last year or so properly. I ran a picture only the other day through two AI channels, and one of them gave me one description that I know was very accurate. The other one gave me a totally different description and had things that just did not make sense. Now, if I didn't know which was the right one, which one should I trust?
Yeah, and I mean, so semi-relevant tangent, and I promise to get back on topic again shortly. But one of the things that, you know, as a guy in a wheelchair, one of the things that often sort of gets asked of me is, you know, what are your thoughts on things like self-driving cars, right? Because it's all AI and tech and great, right? I love the concept, but the actual kind of AI behind that freaks me out. And I say that because it's taking input and it's being trained to avoid things, right? In the event of a crash or an accident, or if something's going to happen, you kind of swerve to avoid a person, right? I'm a guy in a wheelchair. If I'm wheeling on a footpath and a car's going to crash, how do I know that the AI has been fed, you know, things like rubbish bins and that sort of stuff as things that they can crash into to avoid injuring someone, instead of, you know, potentially a guy in a wheelchair that kind of has a similar shape to a, you know, a thing that may be okay to crash into, but in my case, it would be pretty disastrous, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure it's going to solve the world's problems. Be great if it did, but I don't think it will.
No more Band-Aid solutions, please. All right, we have a question from Claire following on these thoughts. Jacob Nielsen's accessibility has failed article. Has accessibility failed? I haven't read this article, so if you have, please give us a summary. Surely one of you has. Neil, I see a glistening.
Yeah, no, it's not failed, but I think Jacob has an agenda, and I kind of probably shouldn't get into that here.
Yeah, that's also
Okay.
kind of why I held back, Neil. I don't think accessibility has failed at all. I think the thing with the thing with accessibility, but also anything like it, is change takes time. And, you know, yes, some of this positive change that we've seen has taken more time than ideally we would have liked it to. But I think things are moving in the right direction. And I think, you know, that is a result of a lot of hard work on a lot of people's parts. So I don't know that we can, well, in fact, I know that we can say that accessibility has not failed, because things are better than they were 5 years ago, better than they were 10 years ago, better than they were 20 years ago. So, you know.
And 30 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
True.
I also, in that article, I remember he talked a lot about generative AI and replacing a lot of content and stuff like writing and imagery and stuff. As a content specialist, that sort of thing worries me a little bit, because, I mean, you can go on any, say, plain language thing and you can get it to spit out a sentence that is, you know, a 7th grade reading level, perfect, wonderful scores, and it all looks like it's plain language, but it doesn't actually make any sense to a human being's brain. And I just think that the idea of throwing the entire accessibility industry out the window and replacing it with ChatGPT is ludicrous, because so much of WCAG and various other standards are interpretable. They need people to interpret them, and there are lots of gray areas. And there, in our Slack channel, we have experts with, decades of knowledge on this arguing about how something should be interpreted. How could we possibly expect an AI to be able to have that conversation? So I think, the fact that accessibility is always growing and developing and changing is not the sign that it's a failure. It's a sign that it's a living, breathing, organism, essentially.
Well, and I think that's the other thing, Tess, is you can't take people out of the equation when you're talking about accessibility, because fundamentally it's about people.
True.
So,
although we will all eventually join the hive mind, so.
Some people already have.
There's the Intopia webinar bingo card, something apocalyptic. Pick. All right, next one. How does intersectionality impact people with disabilities?
I'm gonna jump in front for this one because it's a topic I feel very strongly and passionately about. I think it really is getting that disability to be part of the conversation about diversity is sort of the beginning, but understanding the way that disability can interact with your various identities is really, really important in making sure that we're finding solutions that suit people. For example, if you are somebody who is, let's say, low literacy or somebody who is low technological literacy, because you come from a socioeconomic background with less opportunities to get that kind of education, and then you end up with a disability where you need some kind of technology to interact with a computer. What are the chances that you're going to even know that technology exists, let alone then find the help to get it? Or the ways that people with disability are discriminated against in the healthcare system based on other factors like their ethnicity, like their gender, their sexuality, things like that. There are just so many areas where there are these massive overlaps of, all these different identity factors, and to try and take any of them out into a vacuum is ludicrous. And I talk about this a lot with gender because I see these forms, for example, where we might have, put your legal gender in. So what's recorded with Medicare. So not even getting into the concept of gender. We're just talking about assigned gender at birth. And they will say male and female, and they won't actually acknowledge that there is a third legal gender in Australia for people who are intersex. And so they actually, that's in an inaccessible form. They can't fill that form out because the option of what their legal gender isn't there. So that is an accessibility issue as well. So there's these weird ways that accessibility and diversity kind of fold together and overlap in ways that you wouldn't expect. I get really sidetracked talking about this, sorry. I'm not sure if I'm on topic, but I'll just spend the next half an hour talking about it. No, but so it's just something that we need to be aware of, that when we are talking about disability, or in particular when we're working with customers or when we are doing usability testing with people, we don't want to cut them off and say, don't talk about, your experiences with discrimination against, your ethnicity. We're here to talk about your disability, because those two things are often, linked. So we need to take that big picture approach to when we are doing that user research and when we are thinking about accessibility. I'll stop now.
It's awesome. Maybe that I don't know if we could add any more onto that. That was fantastic. Thanks, Tess. We have one more here from Julia. If people want to start improving their digital accessibility, what's the first thing you suggest they start working on?
I think we've all got thoughts, but who wants to go first?
You've just volunteered.
Sure. All right. So for me, I mean, there's so many to choose from, but I think for me, the first one, and it's a relatively easy one in my mind anyway, and that's colors and contrast. So biggest thing would be to make sure that your color contrast for all of your digital assets for your content is meeting contrast requirements, because the higher the contrast, the easier things are to read. That'd be where I'd start if I was if someone was asking me to suggest where they get started. I'd be looking at the brand palette and looking at the colors you're using, and working out if they pass the contrast requirements or not. Neil?
I think that's a really good start. And I would also say another option is look at your links, look at your forms, look at anything that requires people to do something. Is it clear from the labels that you're using on your links or on your form fields what that thing is that you want them to do? And if it isn't, make it clear. Be really, really clear with your labeling, and make sure that's done properly. And the other one, probably when it's kind of linked to that, is use alt text to describe your images.
Neil, you just said exactly what I was going to say. Alt text is like the number one thing I see when I'm like just skimming around people's websites who are already involved in digital accessibility, but it's like sometimes they'll even have it on their website, but they won't acknowledge that they need it on social media. Alt text is everywhere, forever, alt text.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would say is slightly more of a metaphorical approach, which is to just take a deep breath and calm down. Because I think a lot of the time people learn about digital accessibility and they get completely overwhelmed because it's very big and there are lots of problems, and they think, oh my God, I'm never going to fix everything and I'm never going to do this. And then sometimes they might think this is too hard, I'm going to put it down. And I think Neil earlier said, it doesn't happen overnight. It is going to be baby steps, improving your website or your product or whatever it is. And I think that is really important, that the thing that people should work on is maybe accepting that this is going to be a long, slow, often painful process, and that whatever they're doing is going to help. Anything that you're doing is going to help. Just put a little bit towards it and start that way, and then you can snowball from there. But don't try to solve the entire problem in one go.
Absolutely. Yeah, accessibility is iterative, isn't it? Just like everything else that people do with their digital products, and indeed life itself. It's iterative. It's not binary.
I love that. That's a very meaningful spot to finish that question. I'm going to do one more, and then that'll be time for today. To finish us off, what message do you think is essential for everyone to hear on the topic of disability and inclusion?
What I just said.
Yes.
No.
Ditto.
I guess what I want to actually say is that it can happen to everybody. The need to have accessible products and services can and probably will happen to you. Today I have hand splints on because I've got carpal tunnel. This is not what I'd consider a disability. It's an illness essentially, but it's disabled me in the sense that I'm now struggling to use my computer. This is something that is an incredibly common problem that people have. We're all going to age. We're all going to get sick. We're all going to be in an environment where it's too loud to hear the audio. Every single person in the world is affected by accessibility. And I think that is really important to acknowledge, because getting people to care about accessibility often requires them to understand how it relates to them. A lot of people seem to think of it as like, oh, this is just this foreign thing. It affects a small sliver of people. It's off in a box and we don't need to worry about it. But 20 years from now, you're going to really, really wish you'd done something about it when you're the person who can't use that website because through natural aging, your eyes have deteriorated, or for whatever reason. So I think it's just putting yourself in those shoes, because you are that person. We are all the people who need accessibility.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Sorry, Neil. I was going to say, and everyone's disability is different, right? It's contextualized and contextual to the person. So, if I take my own example, guy in a wheelchair, completely different experience to another guy in a wheelchair that might be sitting next to me, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's more the fact that, you know, you can't kind of generalize, and we were talking about usability testing and research earlier. That's why it's important to get multiple participants and multiple views. You can't just rely on, you know, the one guy in the wheelchair or the one blind guy or whatever it might be, to, you know, do your testing and get your feedback, because disability is different for everybody.
Totally agree with what both Tess and Adam have said. The amount of times we observe conversations about, well, how many people are we really talking about? You know, and you see conversations about whether it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5, or 1 in 6 people. It doesn't matter. It's 1 in 1 potentially, because if it's not you now, it might be in the future. If it's not you now, it might be your partner or your kids or your grandparents or any other members of your family or your co-workers or your next door neighbors. It could be any one of you at anyone at any time. And that's not sending up a fear flag. It's not about that. It's simply saying every single person has the potential to benefit from this.
That's a wonderful place for us to finish off. Thank you, Adam, Tess, and Neil. That's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to the conversation. This webinar has been recorded. You'll be able to find it on Intopia's YouTube channel very shortly. Thank you to our captioners, AI Media. This week is GAD week at Intopia, as we're calling it. Again, we've got some really exciting resources that are dropping throughout the week. So keep an eye on our socials to keep up to date. Thanks all for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.